Which brings me to Lenovo. One of my favorite stories from the last from the last Olympics, and Lenovo directly confronted this issue of Asia, or actually global diversity. How? Let me put the question to you this way: how do you position Lenovo as a solution provider, much in the same way IBM now positions themselves as providing solutions, as being something more than just a company that gives computers to the Olympic Games so that we can have our Excel spreadsheets, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? How do you become something more? How do you deliver this message across 25 countries, numerous languages, and varied ecosystems? How do you do that? And once you have fans coming there, how do you keep them engaged? We don't want them to just come once and then leave. Oh, that was nice. Yeah, great, bye. No, that's not what we're looking for. We want them coming back so that you have an increased number of touch points with your stakeholders. How do you do this? Well, thinking about what we just said about the varied ecosystems, this is a very difficult challenge. And very quickly, here's what the Lenovo site looks like. And to highlight a couple of items, there are multiple ways of accessing this content. You can go directly to the site. There are RSS feeds. You can share the material. You can find it inside delicious bookmarks, for example. We have some blog posts in Japanese down at the bottom. You can follow all of this information on Twitter, and there's also even mobile widgets available. So they've made this available not only in a way that crosses the diversity of people, but it also crosses the diversity of channels. If the internet has done anything, it has given us this plethora of channel choice. And Lenovo has said we need to cross both the diversity and the multiple channels. Here are the results: 10.4 million impressions, 1.4 million visits to the Lenovo site from the Olympic site, 202 blog mentions, 1,500 athlete blog posts, and over 8,000 comments on the site. And if I remember correctly, around 800 photos were uploaded to this site, and there were more than 6,000 comments on those photos. So again, a lot of activity around the content, and I'd like to thank Ogilvy for sharing these statistics. So I do think that the diverse ecosystems can be bridged, and we can bridge them quite effectively. Interesting and timely content is going to be critical, especially in those markets where people are less reluctant to reveal themselves. You need to take the lead on the content rather than waiting on user-generated content. And one of the things that really struck me as I was speaking with John Bell of Ogilvy, who heads up their 360 Digital Influence, they did not go with, say, a star athlete. I mean, going into this last Olympics, who wouldn't have loved to have Michael Phelps as a spokesperson, right? And he did perform as expected. He beat Mark Spitz's record of 7. Well, but afterwards, it's been a little bit of a problem for him. I guess he has a little bit of a smoking habit. And think about the risk that is associated, that if you tie your brand so closely to one or two of these athletes, and they turn out to make a mistake for whatever reason, I'm in no position to judge Michael, but for whatever reason, that risk to your brand is extremely high. And it's really striking to me how they use so many different athletes, and that allows them to reach the different cultures, to cross the languages, but it also reduces your risk exposure. It's just one of 100 who misbehaves. And finally, why not host this at an existing site? Why not turn to WordPress or Facebook to host this? Would make a lot of sense. In fact, Facebook already has a very large, a 200 million global population, right? Why not go where the people are? Well, think about what's been happening in China lately. We've seen Twitter shut down. We've seen, well, for a long time, we've seen BBC shut down. We saw 56.com shut down. We've seen Google get their hands slapped. The interesting issue here, I think, is that you have a choice between going to an existing media destination, such as Facebook, where the people are, but there's a risk. You are now dependent upon another company to host your content, and you are dependent upon another government to not shut you down. Where conversely, you could do what BMW did in China, and they created their own social community that they host on their own. So one of the key questions that I've seen coming up in the discussion of post-Olympic internet blocking and censorship in China, does it make more sense for a company to create its own unique media destination so that you're not subject to this regulatory uncertainty from the China government? I think that's a really good question and something to think about depending upon the market that you're in. In Singapore, I'm not going to be too worried about it. The internet blocking we have in Singapore is token. They make their point clear and then let everything else go, largely everything else. But in other markets, that's not the case. So we can find good examples from Asia, and there are a lot of them. I don't have time to talk about my favorite company, Tencent, but here is a company that has changed business models. They are getting revenues directly from the users, and they're using what we call digital microtransactions, $1, $2. Last year, they had enough cash left over in the bank to almost duplicate the deal where Rupert Murdoch bought MySpace. That's how much money they are making. This is an incredibly profitable business model. BMW with their own social network, Kia Buzz, very successful use of a blog. There are a lot of examples in Asia. Siak Siak, another example. A lot of things to look at.